exactly. There's a balance, and I think there's more things you can do than just put farmers out of business than to protect the salmon, because without the farmers, there's going to be houses, and that's not protecting the salmon either.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast.
I don't think I've ever been to a more idyllic farm setting than Jack Mallonee's farm in Southwest Washington. He's 22 years old, fourth generation family farmer with a small organic dairy, and it will surprise you why his family chose to go organic so many years ago and why they continue to be an organic farm to this day. I'm Dylan Honcoop. This is the Real Food, Real People podcast, traveling all over Washington State to get to know the real people behind our food. Today, we go to Curtis, Washington, and again, talk with Jack Mallonee. You're only 20 miles from I-5.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
But a lot of people don't even realize this is all here.
Nope.
I mean, we're
a hidden gem. This is what it is, a hidden gem. People love it out here. People come, they visit, but nobody really knows it's here.
And this is called Curtis?
Curtis, Washington. It's also called Boisfort, and it's called Claber.
Okay.
So there's the Claber Hopfields was a guy who died on the Titanic, and the University of Washington was going to be here if he wouldn't have died.
Wow.
It was the one of two spots for it.
That's crazy. So we're here not far from like Chehalis, if people know where that is. What do you farm? You have animals, you got dairy and beef?
60 cow dairy with the robotic milker. So we don't milk any cows by hand, but we have a dairy farm, and then we do a little beef, and we grow all our own hay.
Nice. So it's busy all the time then?
All the time, 365 days a year. The cows always need fed.
And it's an organic dairy, right?
Yes, we've been organic for 22 years now.
Wow. Kind of organic even before it was as big of a thing as it is now.
Pretty much. We were at the very start, right when it was kind of launching. People didn't like it. Before it was a trendy word, really, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I never met my great-grandpa, but he was organic before it was even that because fertilizers cost so much. It was more natural stuff.
Why?
It was cheaper and easier then.
Yeah.
It wasn't a trend word. It's just how you did it to save money, really.
Right. And now, why do you guys do that? I mean, what's kind of the philosophy behind your farm and why you farm the way you do?
For me, it's how we've always done it. I like it. I'm not opposed to conventional in any way. Like it's fine, but it fits our style. We can't be a conventional farm and we wouldn't be profitable. It wouldn't work with such a small number. Like there's no conventional guys who milk 60 cows anymore.
Right.
They're all 300-400.
Yeah.
I mean, 10,000, 12,000 cow dairies now.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm amazed by that. I love it that you guys only milk 60 head. Again, I don't have anything against the bigger farms, but farms of that size, that was the size of farms
that was
both
everybody
that my
back
grandpas had. Yeah.
You never hear a story of anybody who had more than 200 cows back.
Oh, those were
40
huge,
years ago. And now there's 33,000 dairies to 300 miles away from us.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's not scalable here. But
so how do you guys make it work with such a small dairy?
Technology, definitely technology. The robot, we have the sort gate that sorts the cows for us. But, I mean, the robot saves 9 hours a day of labor.
Now, sorts the cows. Explain that. How does that work?
So when they go out to pasture, so we're pasture-based. That's another huge part of organic farming.
Right.
And dairies. You have to be on pasture 180 days of the year. So when they're going out to pasture, say at night, with the robot, it milks 22 hours a day except for when it cleans. So if they come in the barn, it'll just sort them back out. Like it'll sort them out to the pasture or keep them in the barn so they have to stay and get milked. So it's less time for us fetching them and just handling
it knows
them.
basically by tracking.
Yep, just by a little RFID tag. Same thing with an Apple AirPod, like tag
Fitbit.
and Fitbit, all those things. All the technology is just in farming now. I mean, almost every farm has that technology in a certain way.
Right.
We just use it to track our cows and how they go and where they go.
That's crazy, because then you don't have to have a person doing that, and the cows can kind of just move as they want.
Exactly.
In and out.
They're calmer. They say they're calmer. They are calmer. I believe they are. You're not spending an hour handling them. You're spending an hour baling hay or
Right.
doing something, fixing something that's broken. That's one thing I've noticed with the robot is when it's working great, you're doing so many other things that you're not getting behind. And that's kind of where like the older farmers, they were always so busy, they never got ahead. And I think that's why they kind of just fizzled out, because you had to get employees and all that stuff.
Right.
And you couldn't get ahead with just 2 people. Now it's my dad and I and my brother when he's home and occasional help here and there, but it's mostly 2 people.
Yeah.
Probably 330 days of the year.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's old school.
Yeah.
I love
But
it.
it works because we have the technology. Without the technology, we'd be paying 2 hired people probably,
Right.
at least.
And in the current job market, good luck finding anybody.
Can't find anybody.
Yeah.
No.
Robots aren't cheap, though, either. Like, that's a huge investment.
Huge
right?
investment.
But it pencils out in the long
In
run.
the long run, I mean, peace of mind, it pencils out right away.
Yeah.
You save 8 hours a day from startup to wash down at the end. Yeah. I mean, that's free time that you can do other things. You can leave. You can go to town. You can go to dinner.
People don't understand these things. Dairying,
dairying.
Without that, you couldn't do that. And for all time up until now.
Exactly.
You're
And that's why
stuck.
people didn't want to do it. And then they don't want to do it if they're milking cows in a carousel for 2 hours. They're like, oh, man, twice a day, that's 4 hours of just milking.
Yeah.
No young person really wants to do that, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
Because it's just not, it's repetitive, and repetitive things, honestly, are terrible.
So how long have you been milking your cows with a robot?
This is going to be the 6th year with the robots. And we got, like you said, long-term investment. It gets paid off in 3 or 4 more years, depending on everything. So eventually, once it's paid off, and all the upgrades that came with it, new equipment, it was a total transformation.
So when you did that, was that hard at first? You kind of have to train the cows to know what's going on with the system, right?
I'm young enough, because I'm only 22, so I was just in high school when we were putting it in, because my grandpa just passed away, and then that was kind of the switch. Like, they had talked about it. Right. My grandma was still farming with us, and then my dad was like, we're going to do it because we're not going to have another way. Yeah. So it was kind of do or die at that point, but we went from the 4-stall barn milking parlor to the robot, and it was rough at first. I remember a lot of roughness, and then now we're here, and it's worked so far.
I understand that. Like, you get the cows used to it. At first, they were like, what is this machine? What's going on?
I mean, even with the new heifer, you got to train them and train them and train them and fetch them. And sometimes you have to put them on a halter and drag them in because they just
come on, get in.
They aren't used to walking through something.
But once they get used to it, they love it. I've heard.
They get the grain in the robot and they'll walk in circles all day long.
Let's milk again. Hey,
yep.
It's crazy. You showed me that just before we started our chat here to watch it. Its thing. I've seen lots of robots, and every single time I see one, I just kind of stop and.
Well, they're all a little different too. There's 3 or 4 different brands. They're all set up. Ours is a flat parlor. Some are in a pit. They're all just a little different, and that's another thing about farming, is everything's a little different. And if you find your groove, then you can do it for as long as you want.
So talk about the milk that you're producing. Then robots milking it. You have all jerseys. Is that right?
We have Holsteins, jerseys, and a new breed we're using called Fleckvieh. So they're a dual-purpose cow, and that kind of takes into the beef side, which I think is crucial for organic farmers, because you can't have a Jersey calf that's a steer. It's pretty much worthless. And for an organic person like us, 60 cows, you get 65 calves a year. Yeah. If you get a calf that's worthless, you're just going to lose money. So they're kind of a bridge between that. They're supposed to milk good, but they're really muscular. So they sell good too. They put pounds on, and they're supposed to be feed efficient.
So how long have you been raising that breed?
Our first one is milking now. We have more, and then it's our 3rd year.
So do they milk good so far?
The first one is all right. It's a
Yeah.
Jersey, like a Jersey. So not a ton of milk, but better components.
Yeah.
But it's
Like more milk fat.
but it
and
didn't
stuff?
lose any weight when it calved. It's looked the same. It's got a big hind quarter. It's not all bony.
Hmm.
It looks good. Unlike
That's
I don't
awesome.
like Jerseys. Jerseys are my least favorite breed. They're just skinny.
A lot of people love Jerseys because they're so friendly.
Yeah, but they're skinny and they don't give as much milk.
Yeah.
And for us, I need a cow that if I'm going to have to cull a cow, it needs to weigh a lot so you get more on the hoof.
Right. For the beef side of it.
Yep. So that's where the dual purpose, and I read a lot of articles and stuff, and farming in the United States isn't like farming in Europe where they have a lot of dual purpose animals. It's all milk or all beef.
Yeah.
It's not a combination of both.
Makes sense. Jerseys don't produce as much milk, but like you said, there's more components, aka the different nutritional factors, milk, fat, and other things.
And you get paid more on those, but if you only have 60 cows, are you putting enough milk in the tank?
Yeah.
Or you have only 120 cows, are you really putting enough milk in the tank to pay the bills?
Yeah.
And that's up
Even
for
if you're
debate.
getting paid a bit more for it because
you
it's
get
Jersey
your
milk.
bonuses and your butter fat and that, but you still have to put milk in the tank. The tank needs to be full. That's the goal at the end of the day. That's the goal for us. That's the goal for the conventional people, is to put as much milk in the tank to make a profit.
Yeah. That's part of sustainability, I guess,
That is
right?
part of sustainability.
You gotta pay the bills,
You do
otherwise-
have to pay the bills. You can look in the fields. Our fields are bright green right now, but if that's not sustainable, if you're not making the money to pay everything else, and with inflation right now, paying the bills gets harder. And if you can't, if your cows don't go up to make more milk, you're not getting paid as much more anymore. Your margins are just slipping away. Even if you made a little bit more with Jerseys, now they're tighter, but your cows are maxed out on production. Holstein, you can usually bump up with some more grain or something.
Yeah.
Just depends.
So you feed your cows some grain, and then all
Some
the hay
grain
that you raise?
and all haylage bales that we raise ourselves. We don't buy any hay. We just buy grain. We get about 9 tons a month. So not
Yeah, what percentage of the cow's diet roughly is grain versus grass?
in the summer we average 80% dry matter intake from forage. So way over half is all forage from the fields around us and any hay we feed. In the winter, it's all haylage bales and a little bit more grain just to balance it out.
Yeah. So how does it, there's the whole crop side, which you guys just do grass. So you don't do corn
No
or
corn.
any other crops, just
No
grass.
corn, just grass. We do a little sorghum, but we do a lot of interseeding with turnips, all those crosses, sorghum Sudan, triticale.
What do you do? Do you do those for forage feed? What about
For grazing, strictly grazing. So we'll do turnips, and if we're doing, let's say we do triticale in the fall, we'll do turnips and sorghum in the summer to get a second crop, and then go back to grass. And then we'll take grass out, do triticale, stuff like that.
how does that work with turnips? They just eat the tops?
They eat we do
Or they
like
pull them up?
They do both. It's interesting. So
seen that
but we're
before.
doing a leaf turnip, so there is no bulb. So it's like a rape, turnip cross, stuff like that. They're mostly hybridized,
Yeah.
but we can't do any GMO or treated stuff, so it's all
Right.
natural.
Right. So what's the kind of perspective you guys have on sustainability then? Like it's probably your manure that fertilizes the fields.
Yep, we do all our own manure, and we do lime and gypsum. And then we're always trying new things, new cover crops, no-till.
Yeah.
If we didn't plow a field till about 5 years ago, everything had been the same grass for the last 65, 70 years.
Wow.
And we've been adding new grasses and whatnot since then.
Do you mostly do no-till, or are you introducing more tillage now?
Well, so that's complicated. Around here, the best way I can describe it is we don't get enough cold days to do strictly no-till because the rain compacts the ground so much, and then the frost doesn't break it up. So because I asked a dirt farmer down the road, why don't you no-till? And he said, Well, it doesn't get cold enough. There's no frost heave. So the frost lifts the ground up, and then it brings it back down and breaks it up the soil. So when you no-till, you're not tilling,
Right.
and it's not breaking that all up. So you have to do a little bit of both around here because we get 100 inches of rain we got last year, and we average about 80.
You said a dirt farmer. What does that mean?
Oh, dirt farmer, crops, more of your commodity crops. They do malting barley, wheat. They used to do peas before the canneries left. That's a theme. All the canneries left around here.
Same for my dad. My dad grew peas until the canneries left town.
And then now
he switched to red raspberries.
Yeah, exactly. Now there's, I mean, that was my childhood, was pea hay, hauling it in the summer. And then he's doing malting barley, grass, alfalfa, just a mix now, trying to find something that works. Because you can't always do wheat. We're not dry land wheat farmers over here.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a total cycle then for you guys. The manure fertilizes the crop. You harvest the crop, feed it to the animal, and it becomes manure again, and the circle
exactly
continues.
Or the cows put it back on the field as manure when they graze it off, and we don't have to turn on a tractor. And that's part of the efficiency part is in the summer we're running equipment, but we're not running silage trucks and stuff. We're running hay equipment that we're going to use all winter. In the summer, we don't feed barely any hay, so our costs go way down for feed stuff.
You probably can't graze the cattle in the winter though, because of how wet it is,
because of the moisture, and we're in like a floodplain area, so a lot of flooding every year happens around here. Is always flooded. Back in 2007, when we had the major floods around here, the barn had boot-high water in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Scary.
I remember that.
Yeah.
It was dirt, flooded fields on every side of the road. It was incredible.
That'd be scary.
Yeah. And it'll happen again.
Yeah.
It'll happen again.
Real quickly, our sponsors for the podcast are Mana Insurance Group, for one. They do my insurance. I think maybe they should take care of yours as well. They shop a lot of different providers, and the company was founded by a high school classmate of mine. Small town focus, even though they do stuff all over Washington and now in California as well as Arizona, but still keeping that small town mentality, trustworthy people, not trying to upsell you, trying to make sure you're taken care of, you get the best deal possible, and your family's financial future is protected. ManaInsuranceGroup.com. Check them out. Also, Dairy Farmers of Washington, sharing stories like Jack's and so many others, as well as information about what goes into the delicious dairy products produced here in Washington State, their nutrition, their sustainability, so many great stories and so much to learn at their website, wadairy.org. I got to make sure I get that right. wadairy.org. Check it out. Online as well as on social media. They're on Facebook and Instagram and probably a bunch of other profiles that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. wadairy.org, Dairy Farmers of Washington, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring this podcast as well. Now back to Curtis, Washington, and our conversation with Jack Mallonee. So what do you think people's take is on what you guys do? I think some people think, 60 cows, that's a big dairy. As we've been talking about, it's not anymore.
Big dairy. So it depends. Around here, there's a lot of people who know agriculture. It's more of an agriculture area.
Yeah.
You go to somewhere else, they're like, 60 cows, I've only ever seen 5.
Right.
And they're like, wow. And I'm like, it's not really that big. Like, we're tiny.
Yeah.
But the people who know farming and know like dairy sizes and that are, I farm 60 cows and we've been doing it. I'm the 4th generation. We've been doing it 4 generations. They're like, oh, that's kind of impressive. Like, that's a little bit harder than people think.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard, but there's definitely a way to do it. And you have to think like a conventional guy, but you can't think like a conventional guy. Like, you got to have a mixture of every side to do 60 cows. You have to have the technology. You can't shoot for outrageous milk production, but you have to, it's all a balance.
Right. What's the biggest challenge to keep that whole system going?
The biggest challenge? Right now, it's input costs that we don't control. We're vertically integrated for the most part, 90% I'd say, except for grain and diesel and parts. And then, yeah, that's most of our budget, but those things are hard to control. Definitely grain costs. We've bumped our grain down this year. We don't shoot for high numbers to begin with, and we're still filling the tank, but all the costs just kill you. Yeah. So our goal is to just have a good reproductive system, and if the cows are always staying fresh and we're always bringing new cows in when we need them, and our tanks, like we keep our production the same, that helps, because our pay price is set all year long, so we know what we're going to get paid so we can plan. We're not like a conventional person where it's $22 a hundredweight right now, I'm pretty sure, and it could be 12 in 2 weeks if something crashed. Ours will never drop, and that helps us plan. So even with the bumps and stuff in price for grain and diesel, we can kind of plan for that. And we can say, oh, we're not going to upgrade this. We're just going to hold steady because it's still working fine.
Right.
And we'll just keep how we're doing. So we can plan. Other farms, that's why we could never be conventional, because we have no guarantees of price or anything. Right. It can go up and down and up and down. And we'd be screwed if it went down to $12 a hundredweight.
So that's all because of how your co-op...
How our co-op is formed. Yes, we're Organic Valley's our co-op.
Yeah.
And they set their pay price through the whole year. We have a deduct in the summer, like the spring flush is what they call it, deduct, and then we go back up in the winter because some people are seasonal. And that's another way some organic people do it, is they just go dry all winter when the grass isn't green.
Right.
Or it's frozen out, or... Because they originated in Wisconsin, so it's 30 below in the winter.
Right.
You're not doing a lot of farming then.
Yeah.
The cows...
Grass is still almost sort of growing here through a lot of the winter, but you can't...
No, last year it grew all winter long.
But you probably couldn't put the cows out like we were talking about earlier because it's too wet.
No, we put them out in February, actually. Yeah. We got really ambitious. It was a dry for 2 weeks. We're like, the grass is like knee-high. Let's put them out. And if they tear up the field, we're saving hay bales.
Right.
Because it was so dry last summer, we didn't make as much hay as we wanted.
Right. But that can ruin a field, right? If you put cows out too wet.
Definitely, and that's where tillage also comes into play. No-till, you can plant almost anything. You can't plant alfalfa no-till, but you can plant almost everything else. But you can't smooth out a field. You can't get rid of bumps. You can't get rid of dips.
Well, it can damage the stand of grass too, right? Where the production's poor.
But that's also where you can just broadcast stuff over top.
Add seed.
And it'll come right back. You just can't get rid of the dips and the bumps and the stuff like that.
So do you have that some years where it's hard to get your full 6 months of grazing in because it's too wet?
This year we definitely got out later, but usually not. It's usually plenty dry enough. And then we'll just go this fall till it starts pouring rain. We push it pretty hard. We like to graze. But, I mean, we're lucky we have irrigation too, and that's a big concern for people all over the state now is how to get water and how to keep your water rights and all that. We're lucky that we have a good water right and it's top on the list so we can use it, and we have a lot of it that covers all our acres.
So does that go back to your great-grandpa or before? Or?
We have the second most senior right in the valley.
Wow.
So it's one of the best. The other one is the blueberry people down the road, and they bought that specifically for the water.
Right.
Because they know they can't lose it.
Yeah, because in Washington, it's all based on how old it is, right?
Yep.
Like seniority. So the older it is,
the later you get it turned off.
So, is that an issue here with people getting their water shut off?
Over in Chehalis it is. We don't have that issue. We're closer to the head of the stream, so we have a lot more in-stream flow.
Yeah, so what if people get shut off, what's that based on? Not enough water in the river?
Not enough water in the river. How fast it's moving down the river, height, just depends.
And how much irrigation in this part of the state comes out of the river or streams versus wells and stuff?
The wells, there's no wells around here in this valley that are any good. They're all saltwater wells.
Oh, really?
Yep. So the ocean actually has like a little path underneath us. that.
And we're a ways from the ocean. I mean,
yeah,
it's out
we're
there.
like an hour and a half, but our neighbor right over there drilled the well, hit salt water.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so there's a few shallow wells here and there, but it's all river water irrigated. There's no canals, no dams.
Yeah.
It's all river water.
How much does concern about salmon then play into how you farm, how you water, all that kind of stuff?
So we have fish screens on all of our pumps that we use so they can't get sucked up into the pump. But definitely for the in-stream flow, that affects it a lot. But the fish screens definitely help. They protect the fish. They were part of the tribes, gave them to us as a protection, like grant. That was a grant thing they went around and did to protect the fish. And I think it's great.
Collaboration then between the tribes and the farming community?
Yeah, and the conservation people.
Very cool. I know recently there was talk about requiring big buffers along all the streams.
That was scary, scary, scary stuff.
Why? I mean, isn't that about protecting the salmon?
Yeah, but everything on the roadside across from us right now would all have been trees. We would have lost almost every field on the right side of us. We would have had maybe 2 acres over there. And then if they would have went to the ditches on the other side, we could have lost more and more. So we would have pretty much had nothing at that point.
Right.
Because we were at the 250-foot mark, and that's almost on the road. So that would have been...
They wanted 250 feet of trees away from the stream.
Off the top of the bank for our place.
To each side?
Yeah.
So 500 feet,
pretty
basically,
much. Yep. And
with
there's
the stream in the middle.
20 acres across the river and like 15 up front here. And almost half of that would have been all gone to trees.
What would have happened to your farm?
It would have been difficult. I don't know if it would have put us out of business. It probably would have put a big impact on what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it definitely would have made things a lot harder because we really rely on that's all irrigated over there. So we get all our summer production is out of those fields when everything starts drying up like it is right now.
Yeah. So what were you guys doing at that time when that was proposed? You're probably sweating it a bit.
Sweating it. Definitely. I know Dad went and got talking with the legislators. He went on the Zoom call and gave his spiel about why this is a terrible idea. Being involved, making sure people know that this is not good, all that stuff. And that's where stuff like Farm Bureau and all that, they were on top of it right away because up in Whatcom County, they would have lost everything.
Yeah.
If that would have went through.
Yeah. Would have lost, tens of thousands of acres, something like 30,000 acres or
ridiculous amounts for not even beneficial impact is what they really said in the end.
Yeah, what do you say to people who say, well, I mean, if you got to do it to protect the salmon, you got to do it.
Yeah, but you got to protect the people too. Like, there's a balance. And I think there's more things you can do than just put farmers out of business than to protect the salmon. Because without the farmers, there's going to be houses. And that's not protecting the salmon either. Because, I mean... there's either farms or there's houses, and Whatcom County, you can put houses everywhere. There's not going to be trees. Yeah. And people like that, and they'll pay a lot of money to move out of the city and
money talks.
It does.
As much as you try to protect something, if there's a lot of dollars on the line, people will figure out how to do that. That's where the salmon get all their help is they want to protect it, so they put money into figuring out ways to do it. The tribes have a lot of money and all that. This area, this part of the state has been losing small farms. And it's been kind of an area that has had traditionally a lot of just small farms, not a lot of big farms out here. But you guys in this area are losing a lot.
Yeah,
Why is that? What's going on?
I think there's a lot of different things. It's a lot of people are getting older. Not a lot of people take over farms that are my age or in their 30s, and I think that's the main thing is people don't want to farm because it's so hard and because there's not the technology that they want or their parents don't want to change for them. Yeah. And nobody's grooming my generation to take over farming at a small scale. You can groom a person to run a tractor on a feedlot or on a 10,000 cow dairy. You can't groom a person as easy to do the books and feed the cows and make sure the robot's working and
It'd be a
move
jack
the
of
fence
all
on the
trades.
pasture,
Yeah.
and then go fix the tractor in the shop, and then work on the pump if it breaks. You got to know how to do a little bit of everything so you can make it work. And then you call the people that you need for the big stuff. Like
Yeah.
the engine blows up on the tractor. You don't fix it yourself. You call somebody.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to know how to fix the robot when it breaks at midnight when there's no technicians.
Yeah.
And that's a lot harder to groom than just driving the tractor and you send it to the shop when it's broken.
Yeah. Now, I've heard, from multiple families where it's like the next generation is coming up. It's time for them to potentially be taking over. And
yeah, but
people
they
like
gotta,
my age and people like your age are saying, we don't want to take the risk. We don't want to do that much work. We don't want to.
Yeah.
It's totally an unsafe bet for my family.
See,
I don't want to do it.
but you can show them it is a safe bet and groom them into.
Yeah.
You gotta start that though. You can't just say it's time for you to take over. You gotta show them that you can make this profitable.
Yeah.
And that you can do that. And I've seen enough of that I'm determined that yes, it can work.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Like, you're making a different decision than a lot of farm kids do. Like we're just talking about. Most farm kids these days are saying, no, I'm not going to continue on mom and dad's farm.
Exactly.
Grandpa and grandma's farm. But you are.
I think, I grew up right here in this yard, watching the cows get milked, just sitting with my grandparents while they milked 4 cows at a time, helping them dip teats and whatnot, this and that. And then I kind of fed the calves and drove the tractor and did this and that. And then it evolved. And then I went off to college and wasn't here as much, but still I was doing agriculture stuff. I got an AA in animal science, and then I went into business, and now I'm finishing my business degree. And now I've seen enough of other farms and stuff where like I've brought this back and brought that. Yeah. And my dad always likes making changes and doing new things. So he's like, okay, let's try it. And most of it's worked and like it's helped and some stuff hasn't. But that's the thing is I've got the opportunity to do that. Most people come home from college and they hit a stone wall. Yeah, and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we'll try that. And then you get discouraged because it's easy for me to get discouraged. If I got discouraged, I could go to town, get a job, get paid probably a lot more, all that stuff. It'd be simple. But
what's interesting is you're saying oftentimes the way people talk about it, especially the older generation, is all the younger generation's fault in some ways. Like, they just don't want to work that hard. They just don't have the value of that anymore. They want to continue on. But you're saying really it's kind of shared.
It's always shared. They don't want to work as hard, but the older generation doesn't want to buy you could buy a tiny new piece of equipment that makes the job twice as fast.
Have to let them in and be willing to try new stuff. Yeah.
It's like, it's not that you don't have to go spend $1 million and build a new barn for them to be happy. You just got to do 1 or 2 things. Maybe the worst task that you do, I don't know, scraping the barn. You get a bigger scraper. You get a bigger tire on the back of your tractor. Well,
it's just a mentality, right?
You got to be willing to change things. They don't want to come back or your barn's falling apart and they're like, fix the barn today. Nobody wants to come back and just fix the barn and shovel poop. Yeah. That's what. Then they're like, I don't really like this. Or they grew up doing it, and then they don't want to keep doing it.
Do you know other farm kids like yourself who have been in that situation?
There's a lot. I don't know anybody personally. I'm kind of out on my own here. I don't see a lot of people. Yeah. But I know there's a lot of people out there that are my age, a little older, a little younger, thinking, oh, this would be a good idea, suggesting this, and then they get shut down. And they're like, or they've watched the struggles and they haven't got to experience all the good stuff. And then they're like, I don't know if it's for me. Yeah. But you can't just get thrown into it and expect to love it. That's not how it works. You got to have the passion. You got to build it. You got to keep building it forever. Yeah. Because once you get tired of it, once you get burnt out on it, I'm done. And that's the problem with people today is they get burnt out easier because everything is so stressful.
Why do you think everything is so stressful? Why would that change?
I don't think
tighter margins, higher expectations. I don't think
it's changed. I think the way of life is just faster and busier, and you see all the issues in the world. Back in the day, I mean, how I say it is I can stay here for a week. I wouldn't know the gas price went up. I wouldn't know any issue in the world. I could just cut hay and make hay for a week and have no issues. You go to town, you watch the TV, you're like, wow, that's depressing.
Yeah.
You see people, bombs, wars, all that stuff that just brings you down.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem with people. Just, I don't have the drive to do it because they see all these depressing things and then they get brought down. And it's just like,
So you're like living in an older time here.
in a way.
Slower
It's
pace.
it's like the people who go ranch and they just ride their horse all summer long and they check cows and build fence. It's just a different pace, and that's the same here. We're 20 minutes from town, but there's people drive by in their fancy cars on Sunday drives. Like that's the most traffic and some log trucks.
Yep.
It's not a hustle and bustle, and you can go weeks without seeing people if you want.
I think that used to be looked down on more, like,
And
kind of a backward
and
town.
now people move to the country to get away. They're spending all their money to buy 3 acres and have a house with trees around it.
And even if they aren't, they're frustrated with the pace of life. Things are too busy, too stressful. Their phone is in their face all the time.
Exactly.
Me included. But you still feel trapped by it. Like you can't get away from it.
Yeah, you can't get away from it. Here you can get away from it. You can go, like, people always used to just go out and drive the tractor when they were mad. You can still do that here. I've heard that plenty of times. Is if you got in a fight with your wife, you just went out and plowed the field for a couple days. And I'm busy. I'll talk to you later. And then you're over it. Now you're trapped around so many people all the time that you just don't get away. And that's one thing I like about it out here is you can just get away. And you cannot hear a sound forever. And you can just work with cows and have fun.
How did your great-grandpa come to kind of start the family farm here? What's his background?
They moved from town, and he actually grew clover seed back in the day. He did
Where was town?
Chehalis.
Chehalis?
Yep, not too far away, just this and that. And he moved out here when my grandma was 5, I think, in 1950, and then they had a blizzard. So the farm was here, the one barn was here, the shop and the milking parlor he built, but the one barn was here, and then the house was a small Sears box house that was here.
Wow.
So it's been added on to a few times over the years.
Yeah.
But they moved out here to the farm and started farming, and then they had the blizzard, and then they just kept going from there. He worked in town, he did this and that, and then he started farming a little more, and then he just went into it full time. And that's how then my grandma and grandpa bought it. And they started milking cows after he was ready to retire, step down. They milked cows, and then my dad took over when my grandpa passed away.
Yeah.
And then I started helping my dad when I came back from college.
Was that always your plan?
That was always the plan. I didn't know for sure. Maybe I'd get a job, maybe not.
Yeah.
And then I think when COVID happened and we were here, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, this is it. Like, I'm happy. Like, I'll be here. We can make things succeed. We can grow. And it all works good now.
Your dad pumped about that? Was that what he wanted?
I think he's happy about it, yeah. He likes the help. He likes to have somebody haggling him. pushing to be better, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's our goal now, is to not stay the same, is to always get better and better and bring it up to turnkey ready all the time. I think that's the goal, is to always have it look nice and be,
You argue over those changes sometimes,
Oh,
though?
yeah, all the time. That happens. Definitely. Even the little day-to-day things, everything, family disputes,
Yeah. It's family farming. You have
It
to
is
figure
family
it out.
farming, and that's another way you have to be able to work. You have to be able to communicate and then get over things fast to be able to make it work.
Yeah.
Because you hold a grudge, then it just brings it down and tears it apart. And that's another reason so many farms have left is because people didn't get along, and then the farm just got split up because they couldn't agree, or they went broke disagreeing on stuff.
Yep. What was that like, losing your grandpa?
I was 14 at the time. It was rough. It was a big change here for sure. Things shifted, and that's when I realized time to take on more responsibility, do this and that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, people are always like, why are you going to go to college if you're going to farm?
Right.
Why don't you just stay home and work? Like, you already know everything you're going to do. I was like, no, the experience would be good and this and that.
Yeah.
And then I left, went to Walla Walla. That's where I went to college, the community college, and went and worked for a guy who managed a feedlot. And so I went from 60 cows to 10,000 cows.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like this is intense.
Yeah.
But I think I learned a lot of like efficiency things. And I was like, oh, I like working, and then I like coming home and helping. And then I was like, okay, then I'll like this. I'm definitely going to come home. And then COVID happened, and now I haven't left yet. And probably don't plan on it.
Yeah. What's the future for you? And that's like you're saying, this is what you're going to do.
Yep, this is it. The plan, the goal is I got 1 year of college left online, and I want to open a small cheese shop in the old milking parlor. So that's the goal.
Awesome.
And
Have you done any cheese making yet?
I did make cheese in college with the guy who managed the feedlot. He managed the feedlot, and he had a cheese shop that he made cheese.
Awesome.
So he made 6 or 7 different kinds, flavors, all this stuff. He sold, like I got to see how he sold it to people. So he did retail to big like restaurants and stuff, and he did small packages out of the shop. And I think that would be another like value added product for the farm here that could be very beneficial. That's just another thing where if something did happen, like milk prices dropped a little, you could scale up that. And our co-op allows it. So you can go from, I did the math, we could take a whole month of production out to make cheese. So if we sold it for twice as much as our milk's worth, we'd be making a lot more.
Yeah.
And that would add up over a whole year.
The local food movement. This is how
it is.
actually
And it's a thing. You do have to follow what's going on. And that is people like that. They want it. They know where it's coming from. And then you got to capitalize on it. And I see that. And I think that's going to be the next step once everything's settled down a little.
Thanks for having me here and showing me the farm. This place is gorgeous, and it is super quiet out here.
Yes.
I'm really jealous of this because, I mean, I live on a little piece of land that was my grandparents' dairy farm as well, but it's getting to be a little bit busier neighborhood, up there like you're talking about in Whatcom County. There's more people, more houses. The city's getting closer all the time, and yeah. I miss when our road used to be.
That's a good thing about here is it floods. So the amount of houses that can actually go in here are very limited, and I don't think it'll ever get too huge. It'll grow a little, but with the lack of water and the lack of dry ground, it's going to stay the same for maybe an eternity. We'll see.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again for having me and being willing to share your story here on the podcast.
Yes, thank you.
This is the Real Food, Real People podcast. These are the stories of the people who grow your food.